some water? So yeah, what I said before, percussion and noise, and I don't really know how to describe it, but I think you have an idea. So what I'm gonna do now, if someone has any questions, just you can just the idea is that I will explain how it works a little bit. It's not gonna be like a full tutorial, but explain like the parts of the instrument and how does it do the thing. By the way, I was here today. She did the UX design of the panel, so that was her work. Thank you for coming. So yeah, I don't. Let's do. Maybe we can come closer. You can come closer because it's like difficult to see what's in here. I don't know which side. Maybe I'm gonna be on this side because the camera is there. So let's just move a little bit. So the instrument has like 4-ish like different parts. The first 2 rows are the sound design part. That's basically like an oscillator, a noise generator, and a filter. It's not much more than that. The architecture is very simple. That's basically the second row, the first being modulation for them, just like 2 envelopes, one for the pitch and one for the filter. Aside from that, we have the sequencer, which maybe we can put one like, I don't know if there's a way to do it better, but anyway, like the sequencer basically has, starts at the play button, and then we control with the tempo, like the speed of the sequencer, and then there's trigger skipping, and then there's like step modulation. But I will explain all this later. But basically, like the third row is the sequencer, and then this section here is the distortion. There's two types of distortion inside, and the big knob is also part of the sequencer. We'll see that later. And then this is just the volume. So we have sound generation, sequencer, distortion, and the last part is it's like an analog interface for communicating with other instruments that use voltage control. That's what I was using for them to be synchronized to. But you can use it to, for example, if you don't like the fact that this does like random sequencing, you can just use your own seated sequencer, or even use this as a sequencer for another instrument. That's also something that you can do with the series section here. Or interact with your rack and do weird things, which is what your rack people do. Weird things. Flips and blows. And the trigger button, which is just, it's not really useful for live, but it's, I don't know, some people want to sample these sounds, so it's a trigger button for live. And if the sequencer is running, you can also add triggers to it, but there's not much logic to it. It just triggers the instrument. So when it triggers, I will try to go through it, trying not to spend like an hour on it because it could be boring. So I have a clock there, and I will be checking that. So the idea is that what we have, I will go back to like a more like maybe like just open filter, simple pitch, something basic. Okay. So what we have here is like we are hearing the oscillator right now, so we can change the pitch. But we can also modulate the pitch, and for that we have like an envelope decay, and with that we can create like something like a kick by modulating the pitch of the oscillator. There's like the decay time and amount. So it's just like, it's not going to be a perfect kick, but it's fun. I think if you want to do like a kick, that's probably better. Like any drum machine would make the kick that's better than this, but this sounds distorted, which is fun. Then we have the filter, which obviously can either close the high frequencies or close the low frequenes. With a low the filter is resonant, so we can do like weird like resonant sounds. And then we have a crossfader, which we call noise, which is actually like a crossfader between the oscillator that you just heard and a white noise generator. So you can it's just a crossfader. And now something interesting about the instrument is that it has an audio input. So when you plug anything into it, you replace the white noise source, and then you can crossfade into an external signal. And that allows you to use this like a sound processor, like a guitar effect, something like that. And the sound that you put in goes to the filter, the distortion, and even the sequencer. So you can do like envelope sequencing on a guitar or on a radio or anything that makes sound. I mean, a microphone you would have to pre-amplify it, but like, anything that goes to line level you can use for like doing rhythms. So yeah, that's the sound generation part, filter, oscillator, and noise. And then for the sequencer, what we have is two randomness generators and the big knob, which I will explain later. Now the sequencer, if we have something like this, if I turn this knob, it's called random skips, it will introduce like randomly not trigger. It's completely random. That will be like a 50%. And now this is completely random. Now every time it triggers, we have like a step modulation that can generate like a modulation value in which we can modulate like the pitch or other parts of the. So if I say pitch, for example, and I do this. It's like a completely random melody, so we can, I don't know, just make a. So every time it triggers, it chooses a pitch. But in the same way, we can actually, instead of changing the pitch, we can change the crossfade of the noise. So if I do this. You can hear that sometimes you hear the oscillator and sometimes you hear the noise generation. And now the big knob, what it does is it captures all this randomness and it starts repeating things. So if I say 8 and I do this, and that's kind of the idea of the sequencer. It's just three knobs. One for the triggers, the other one for the modulation. These are the destination. It's exactly the same things that I explained in the sound source. The destinations are the pitch, the crossfader of the noise, and the filter. So we can actually, like, for example, close the filter completely. Let's see if I can do that. And sequence the filter instead. And it's the same idea, but we are like opening and closing the filter randomly. And then this section here, it's a distortion. And there's two options. One is called rust, and the other one is called corrosion. And corrosion is just like a overdrive distortion that adds like a ton of harmonics because it goes to 12. So it's kind of. And the fun thing is that when you're at minimum, you're not at zero. There's always some distortion. And then the one called rust is exactly the same thing, but it adds downsampling. So the more to the right you go, you'll start like crushing the sound and reducing the sample rate, which will go from 40-something thousand until practically nothing. So it starts sounding like a distorted Nintendo or something like that, because the distortion is still there. That's kind of like everything. There's not much more to it. It's just like combining the things. Like I spend a lot of time tuning like the filter and the distortion and all these things to make sure that this sounded like as disgusting as I could make it. I didn't want this to sound nice because I think there's a lot of instruments that sound nice, And I'm a bit tired of music that sounds good. So I think people should make music that sounds good. But yeah, that's the whole point. If someone else has any question, just feel free to. I mean, I said that before, but just interrupt me. What else? What else? I have some patch cables here, and there's something that I didn't mention, which is that the sequencer goes to audio rates. So when the tempo is at maximum, it goes to 80 hertz, which basically means that you can listen to all the modulation that's happening at that speed. So for example, if I do something simple, so let's see. Sorry. So if I start going like very fast, and then I start modulating things. The sequencer goes fast enough that the whole thing becomes like a drone instrument, if you want, or it's just a way to generate like a lot of different range of sounds that you couldn't do in percussion mode, because you're modulating an audio. You're doing things like you're running the sequencer, changing things 80 times per second. So it starts like kind of introducing like other oscillators into it and making like more complex sounds. I would just play a little bit more and show some things. A trick that I like to do, that I kind of did in the demo at the beginning, is do something like similar to an acid bass line, something like that. So if I start from this, a simple filter, but it has some drive before that I tuned, like, because I was looking for this like resonance. I mean, it's not gonna sound like a filter, but like you can kind of do like this kind of things. Like it's not just percussion. You can like sequence pitch and play with the filter. That I like to show is that there's some things that you can only do with self-patching. And remember when I told you that this knob would introduce like trigger skips? Something that we can do is that when we are skipping a trigger, the modulation is not changing. So we can actually get the clock, which is, this would be the clock output. And if I do something like this, we have something that's repeating, but that it has some spaces, no? We can fill those spaces with repetitions. If I re-trigger the instrument, like the same with like, I don't know. And then if if trigger skips, I think it's easier to listen with a pitch. Let's say. Yeah. So I have like a 16 step now, and I start introducing skips. It's gonna introduce repetitions instead. Until at some point it's just gonna be the same thing. Like slightly more complicated like patterns by doing step patching. Something else that you can do is like the random step modulation. We have an output for that. So even if there's a switch here that it only allows us to like sequence one thing at a time, we can just put a patch and say let's change the pitch and the amount of noise simultaneously, for example. And we would do. On high pitches, we are not increasing the amount of noise. And that's kind of the idea. Like, something fun that I like to do is when I started designing this, every time that I tried to sequence the crossfader, I would put like my default value at minimum and the modulation value at maximum, because the randomness value is biased in that case, and it's not distributing like evenly. It's biased on the edges. I think it's I'm not sure if it's 20% on each side or 30%. So you almost never hit the middle. It's either like one thing or the other. So if I do this, kind of jumping side to side. But in melodies you're like in between. But with the crossfader, it's more like that. So what I like to do is tune my minimum value of the randomness, which would be what's in the node, and introduce like some noise by default, and maybe not go completely to the right. So I can basically move this bias a little bit to the beginning and start like just always hearing noise and always hearing kicks, but there's like still like a repetition that happens. There's a lot of opportunities for like just going like in between positions and finding like things that may not be obvious when you start like figuring out how it works. It happened to myself. Like when I was designing it, there's a few things that I missed that it seemed quite obvious now. But yeah, what else can I explain? Does anyone have a question? I'm sure someone has, even if it's very basic. That's fine. You can come in. I'm not sure if it's better outside, but there's a lot of space inside. You can feel free to come in.
Can you wiki?
Sorry?
Can you wiki? Wiki?
Huh?
Wiki. Porque lo ves de convertir en una línea, lo vas a español.
Break it by using it. I hope
Or
not.
maybe patching with the inputs and outputs, or
No, I mean, I haven't found. I mean, hopefully
it's
not.
sure to make noise with it.
Yeah. I mean,
It's safe to make noise.
let's put the distortion at maximum and. It's not gonna die because you're just doing something. But in the end, like this is digital and it's just software. So I think that the algorithm doesn't care what you're doing. It's just gonna do it.
That's perfect. So
you
can get wild.
Yeah. I do it all the time. You can run like all the modulations and all the speed. And I made sure that I checked the performance of the CPU. And I've never been like past 40-something%. So I highly doubt that someone's gonna break it because they are using something particularly. I don't think that's the case. But yeah, that's a good question. I was wondering this thing a few months ago before I was like, oh, I'm gonna put this on the market. What if someone does like? So I spent a lot of time doing like weird tests.
Yeah, so I can experiment as much as I want. Like with
Yeah,
the
you
input,
can-
the output, I can do self-matching.
Self-patching, you can run like audio rating from Eurorack.
From Eurorack.
Yeah.
They're not other voltages, right?
Yeah, the thing with Eurorack is that this goes, all the inputs and outputs go from 0 to 5. So if you get a signal from Eurorack, chances are you're gonna be below 0 or above 5. But this is just gonna ignore it. I have to say I'm not an expert on that part, so maybe someone that knows better than me.
Well,
Do you think I can break it by doing that?
you cannot break it.
Okay. So I mean I tested it, but
In fact, you make the best decision right now because 0 plus 5, the most famous multi-signal ranges are using, like the Pamela, stuff like that. So now today is the best to make everything single.
okay. Well, I have the Pamela, but I didn't check that. But the reason I chose 0 to 5 is because I realized that a lot of like external sequencers, I think this one, if I'm not mistaken, 0 to 5, the Korg SQ1 that everyone has, is 0 to 5.
The Docker that time.
The lifetime that I have, that's 0 to 5. So I realized that everything that I had at home was sequencing pitch and gates on 0 to 5. So that's what I did. It's just sad that you cannot like just plug like a, I don't know, like an LFO from Eurorack and do the full game. You have to attenuate the offset. It takes a while. But if you're below 0, it's just going to be 0. If you're above 5, it's just going to be flat at 5. So you will hear the modulation, in which like sometimes it's just flat because you're trying to go beyond what's accepted on the electronics. But if what's is not lying to us, everything's fine.
Well, it all depends on the design, but I'm pretty sure that everything is.
So you can flash firmware too?
Yes.
How does that work?
That's a good question. Because it's digital, you can flash firmware, but there's no firmware port behind. So you have to remove the 6 screws, and then there's an exposed USB port inside, a micro USB. Because this is built on the Daisy still, and the Daisy has a micro USB. And you kind of like have to punch 2 buttons and then connect the thing. But even on the PCB, I wrote instructions. So if you open it, you will see that it says firmware update, step 1, do this, step 2, do that. And then it's not done yet, but working on it in the next, I don't want to say days anymore because everything's late. But at some point during the summer, at some point in this decade, I will have like a firmware page, like firmware.voices.com. There's already like a new version that I'm working on that fixes like some little queries, like little details that happened to this early version. But it's nothing's bad enough for me to have to push new firmware already. So even the new ones that I'm building, I'm not fixing some of these things because I just want to update it as a package. But those are like little things. I don't even want to go into it. Most people are not finding them. So. And then the idea with the firmware is that at some point in this century, I will. We may introduce new stuff to the install. But like the list of what I don't know, I don't want to overcomplicate things. I like the fact that it has a very simple architecture, so I don't want to overcomplicate it. But there's some fun things that we are trying that like, oh, maybe this is worth doing. But yeah, maybe it will happen. But yeah, that's it. To answer your question, yeah, everything is digital except for obviously the CD interface. There's also something that I haven't mentioned, which is that the volume is also distorting a little bit more aside from what's happening digitally. There's like some asymmetric clipping. Again, maybe because it will know more than me of this. But I made a mistake on the schematic and I decided to leave it there because I like how it's done. So there's some clipping at the output stage. And I honestly was like, it sounds better than before. So it's kind of what I said before. I like
the accident, right?
Huh?
What is called a happy accident.
It's a happy accident, yeah. A happy accident. It took me like some days to like trying to wonder why is this happening? Why is this happening? And in the end, I was like, well, why shouldn't this happen? So I just left it. So yeah, there's like three levels, three different places in which distortion is happening very slightly. So that's what makes like all these like huge sound is because it's happening like pre-filter, post-filter, and then post-VCA. All of those can be settled, but it just piles up. I mean, you can do like kind of like
Sorry, now the framework, do you have it open source?
It's not open source. I'm not sure if it will be. I mean, I think it would be cool, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I would like it. But there's a few issues with that. First, like the maintenance cost. Like right now, I don't have time. I don't even have time to build those. So like having to maintain an open source project, the timing may not be the best. Also, the fact that this is built on the basic platform, and everything that's here is just from DCSP. Like I'm not an expert on DSP code. I'm just using a library that everyone has access to. So if someone's curious about like which oscillator are you using, which filter, I'm happy to answer those questions because it's like none of these things I did myself from scratch. So I don't think the open source code would have anything that interesting to anyone. But again, I shouldn't say these things in front of camera because then people will ask. But I'm thinking about open sourcing just the part that interacts with the hardware. Again, this may not happen. It depends if I find the time. But some people have asked for it. Like Daisy, they have aside from the microcontroller. Sorry for everyone that doesn't know what the Daisy is. We're talking about this all the time. It's the microcontroller that I'm using for building the synth. They sell multiple hardware platforms. The pipes, the field, the something. I don't remember the names. And for each of those, they distribute like a thin open source code layer that you basically, it abstracts the position of the controls and all those things. So you can just start like writing things and know that, okay, this is knob 1 maps to this feature. So what I'm thinking is about like doing something similar. It would be like maybe like 100 or 200 lines of code, like very thin, extracted from this project. So people can buy this and then just hack on it and do their own things without having to ask me, I don't know, in which pin of the multiplexer is this not going? Because who wants to spend time doing that? I would just probably open source the matter. Because I think that's what's interesting.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can hack on the device. Not the fact that you can change. Not that I don't want people to change what I did, but I kind of see it as a whole.
Self-contained.
It's a self-contained thing. So in the same way that you cannot move this knob 3 millimeters left, you can also not like it's just the way it is, and I like it. So,
Yeah, that's why I asked. Make a custom.
Yeah.
Like handling it.
that would help people do custom framing, but it would be from scratch. It wouldn't be from what's in here. But again, I may change my mind in the future. I don't know. I think it's too early. I'm so incredibly busy right now. That just the thought of open sourcing this scares me. But it would be fun. It would be fun, and I'm sure more people will ask about it. We'll see. Ask me in a few years. Is there more questions?
Question
Yeah.
to the steps now.
Yes.
It's like a Turing machine.
Mhm.
It's block the sequence and you put 0, it's a reset.
Yes, kind of. It is like a Turing machine, but I got the idea from the Turing machine, but I have to confess I've never used the Turing machine, so I didn't know how it worked. And I was like, well, what if the Turing machine does this? And I had like a half idea of what it did. So what I believe, I still haven't used the Turing machine, so I think the idea that I came up with is not exactly the same. And the big knob of the Metal Fetishist does not map to the big knob of the Turing machine. But the Turing machine has like a small knob with step length, and that's what this would map to. This does not have, if I'm not mistaken, the Turing machine can introduce like subtle changes to a sequence, so you can log something and say, okay, in this amount, change this over time. This is not possible here. If you want to change it, you have to move things. So the idea is that I explained the two random sequencer generators before, but I did not explain too much the big knob, so maybe I can do that now. The idea sorry for that. One second. maybe go back to something reasonable. So let's say we have a melody, for example. The melody is the best example. If I go from 8 to 4 now, we will lose the second half of the sequence. And then if I go from 4 to 8, we will get new 4 steps that are random, which means that you don't always change the whole thing. You can basically start moving left to right and tweak parts of what you just sequence randomly and say, oh, I don't like this, and then you can just go left and introduce new change. Like this is gonna be like, let's see if it works as an example.
Every time you press it,
Now it's the same one. Now it's different. If I go back, we are back at the same place. So this allows you to like slowly build up something that you like. And if the issue is at the beginning, then you just go to off, and then it's completely random again. And you can start building slowly. 2, 4. And if you like this, you can just play with this. And then, let's say we have a longer one. This is a 16 step. And something that I did not explain before is that the random step knob, how is it called? I don't even know. The random step mod knob is an attenuator. So if we are at the beginning, it's just not gonna do steps. And then you can start like increasing this, and you will get the same sequence, but we are kind of like stretching those pitches. And then basically the pitch knob is your minimum value, and this is your maximum. So you can, as I did before with the noise, you can raise your minimum and lower your maximum and start making sequences in a very particular way. So we are just sequencing in between like I don't know, maybe semitone will that, but you know what I mean. You have like an offset and an amount. And you can play with both parameters. And that's the case with pitch. With pitch would be these 2 knobs. With noise, which is the crossfader, would be with these 2. And it works the same way. And then with cutoff, it will be these 2. But you always have a knob. Everything adds to what you have on the panel. So you always have a knob that's your minimum, and then the random step mode is your amount of modulation. So it's a simple idea, but you basically define a range, and then start like looking for patterns there. And something that I haven't mentioned before is that the random skips that I mentioned, I can explain this again, that introduce like skipping. That's this one, you can change it even if a sequence is locked. What I did is that in the text, if you moved it past the 5% or something, I think it was 3% or 5% of change, and then as you move it to the right, you start like losing some of the triggers that you have, and if you start then moving to the left, you start introducing triggers. So instead of like completely shuffling the thing, you can kind of like start like wobbling them up and redistributing your triggers basically. So for example, if I do something like more noisy, like let's do this for example, right? So if I have 8 steps. If I move to the left a little bit, we will introduce new triggers. But those 3 are still there. And now if I move it to the right, I think this is just 1. Maybe like with a 16 it's going to be... Yeah. Let's say we have this. If I move to the right, we will start losing more. Then if you go to the left, it's going to be a completely different sequence. But this only happens because we are tweaking that node. I don't think I've ever explained this before, and I think it's in the manual. But yeah, this I wanted a way for like redistributing triggers without like shuffling the whole thing, and not having to go to off, because if you go to off and you have a pitch sequence, you would lose your notes. So the idea here is that if you have the same thing that I did, if I do it with pitches, it's maybe more obvious. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the range was quite small, but you get the idea. You may like lose some of your triggers and gain some more. But yeah, that's the idea. What time is it? Is it late?
No, it's 5.
It's 5. Okay.
And I got here one unit just in case you want to explain what's inside. Maybe we can do an
Let's do
unboxing.
like an unboxing.
Yeah, because I don't know.
We're gonna do an unboxing video.
I don't know exactly about the details, so maybe we can you can open it.
Yeah.
It's like taking care of the details, and there's even some goodies inside of it, so maybe you can check what's inside. Do you want to do it?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about
Obviously.
it, but it's fun. So this is serial number 37, and as Eric said before, there's a 5% discount here. It's the last one in the show. Okay. So we can remove the strings. Maybe not put it on. We have to sell it.
Please.
I mean, this is just for it doesn't move when I ship it. So we have the manual, which is kind of like a thing, like a photocopy. I don't know how to say photocopy in English. It's Xerox or something. And yeah, well, the manual has like some quotes, an architecture diagram that we can show to the camera. I don't know, some nice things. It's like we spend a lot of time on the manual, and everything, kind of like almost everything that I explained today is explained in the manual. So the idea is that even if you don't know that much about these things, like you don't know what an envelope is, it's explained in the manual. Like everything is explained in the manual. To a certain extent, but because I didn't want to do something like much thicker than this. But yeah, and it's also like a reference manual. You don't have to read the whole thing. You can just go to any section, and the section will start assuming that you're starting from scratch. So I spent a lot of time with the text. That said, that's not that much text. It's just like we iterated like a lot on this. But the manual is something that we will have to change, especially if we make changes to the firmware. There's going to be changes there. So yeah, that's it. Then it comes with a power supply, MIDI cable, which I haven't mentioned, but MIDI adapter. The instrument has a MIDI input here in the back, and you cannot play the instrument with MIDI. It's just for clock synchronization. So like you have a drum machine that's a typical case that I was thinking of. You have a drum machine which does like proper like kick, snare, hi-hats, and those things, and you want this weird monster machine to do like sounds that go at tempo. So then you would have like you would plug this MIDI input, and then the tempo control starts acting as a clock divider. So and this is not done yet, but it's going to be like a divider on one side and a multiplier on the other. So the idea is that you can do like anything always at clock with your MIDI device. What else? Yeah, there's a power supply.
Some extra protection or something, maybe?
The instrument is very noisy, so we included earplugs. So there's some branded body synths earplugs that you can only get if you buy the instrument. Even if you ask me to get this, I will not sell this to you. You have to buy the instrument and make a lot of noise to be worth the body synths earplugs. And then there's some stickers, but honestly, if you're here today, you can just get the stickers from there. But yeah, that's all. I forgot to mention that it comes with an instrument. So yeah, I'm not gonna open this, but it's like a velvet bag with the instrument inside. What else? Here. 1 second, I'm gonna. Oh, I think we could do something with the time that we have. Remember when I mentioned that the audio input can replace the noise generator? So what we can do is like do a drone with one synth and then go to the other one and start making percussion with the song that we generated on the first one. So for that I brought a cable, and what I will do, I hope this doesn't pop the speakers too much. One second. Where is it? So now we have the instrument on the left going into the instrument on the right, and that means that we can start like making, like, for example, something strange. And now on the instrument on the right, we can basically like make a rhythm with it. Like, the idea is not that you need two instruments, although I would recommend trying to because it's super fun. But it's that we are like in this one we are like defining a sound, and in this one making rhythms with it. Now I could, for example, start like modulating the cutoff on this one. The idea with this example is that you can use, like, in this case we're using the Metal Fetishist as an input, but you can use anything. You can, I always make an example with a radio, but I tried it with a guitar and it's very fun because you can start like playing the guitar and having the instrument make like rhythms on you, and that's super fun. Or I don't know, just like a Somalaya or anything that's more drone oriented, and then you can use it for rhythms. And something that I have not mentioned is that when you do that, remember when I started like sequencing between the oscillator and the noise source, we can sequence between one instrument and one external sound. Like if I do the same thing again. Now we were moving like between the sound of one instrument and the sound of the other, basically. Like doing one kick on the right and having a drum here. But yeah, there's like a million other ways in which you can use more than one. But that's just an example that I like to make. And I would say if someone, wants to just play with it, we could just like maybe like connect two of them together and jam a little bit in the same way that I did before. Is that okay?
Yeah. Maybe we can finish like the presentation blog. Well, just to say we are very thankful to have you here. Thanks to Charlie, of course, and thanks to his creator for screaming that loud. Well, we are Navigator Sound and we are show notes, so we got everything you see here is working in stock. And also we are a showroom, which means that you can compare and find on your own. You can ask us for advice, you can email us, whatever you think, okay? So yeah, that's the end of the presentation blog.